silicon, using special lenses to shrink the size of the image. The projected pattern reacted with light-sensitive chemicals, printing the structure on the surface. This technique enabled entire sheets of transistors to be produced at the same time, and then cut up into individual chips and packaged. But actually joining different transistors into a circuit was intricate and painstaking.
Transistors were made in large sheets, and you made many of them at a time. When you made them into a circuit, you would take one of these, and then from some other source, you would take another one, and so forth, and this is the way you would build your circuit. Now, if you look at that, you think there must be a better way. After all, I'm taking these elements, I'm cutting them apart, putting them together so that somebody else can wire the things together. There should be some way of actually building the entire circuit on a single piece of silicon.
Noyce's colleague Jean Erny had suggested that a layer of silicon dioxide could act as a protective coating for an entire wafer of transistors. In January 1959, in what would be his key scientific insight, Noyce realized that Erny's process could enable all the components of a circuit to be printed and connected to each other on a single silicon chip. This meant entire circuits could be mass-produced. Noyce had found a way to manufacture ready-made integrated circuits.
This, as we know now, was a fundamental insight. Really, in some sense, a world-changing insight. And yet, Noyce jots down his notes and does nothing. Every bit of energy at that company was focused on products that they knew would make them money. The integrated circuit seemed like a nice idea. Someday, maybe someplace, they would be able to do something with this, but not right now.
But 2 months after Noyce had noted his ideas, Jack Kilby, a researcher for Fairchild's rival Texas Instruments, announced his own integrated circuit. It was coincidence, but Kilby's notes for his invention predated Noyce's. Kilby's circuit, however, was made of germanium, now seen as an outdated material, and could never be commercially viable. Noyce's silicon chip could be. The two are now credited as the co-inventors of the integrated circuit.
Jack Kilby is the first person to come up with the idea of an integrated circuit, or at least the first one to write it down. Bob Noyce was the first one to come up with one that could be built in mass quantities. The first person to develop an integrated circuit that would then lead to pretty much any item you use today that has an on-off switch.
Fairchild now had a cutting-edge product on their hands. The problem was, it was so cutting-edge, there was no real market for it, as yet. Noyce, who had been promoted to general manager, had to find ways to publicize the device and convince customers to design uses for it.
This is a report on integrated circuits with Dr. Harry Sello.
Hello. We're here to tell you about a recent revolution in electronics.
The marketing guys said, let's do a talk and an explanation and take it right out to the purchasers and the buyers. All of them we can round up by way of a film and give it to as many at one time as we can.
You know, it's exciting to think that all of these functions are here today. They can be used, they're available. And it's even more exciting when you consider the number of applications that these can be put to. Actually, the uses of integrated circuits are limited only by those who are designing these uses.
Integrated circuit chips could be used in everything from radios to missile guidance systems to computers. But it was still cheaper for customers to hand-assemble their own circuits. Noyce urgently needed to get his manufacturing costs down. To do this, he slashed the price of the chips to less than it cost Fairchild to make them, a move that baffled his staff.
I was chatting with the manufacturing manager as the news broke that Bob was at an industry conference and announced that all integrated circuits These were the most complex products, lots of transistors in one chip, will sell for no more than $1. And this manufacturing guy was sitting in my office, really annoyed.
Where does he get off announcing $1 prices? I can't even make it for $5.
But Noyce realized that the greater demand created by a lower price would drive down manufacturing costs, and a cheaper price would convince customers that integrated circuits were a mainstream product.
This is an example of Bob's out-of-the-box thinking, if you wish. A good idea for an area in which he wasn't necessarily an expert by his training. But this was typical Bob Noyce, to come up with the unusual solution.
Noyce's gamble worked. Demand for the integrated circuit took off.
Under his watch, Fairchild became wildly successful. It was the Google of its day. This was a company that was growing faster than any other company on Wall Street for a while.
Processes, product, packages, price. Invented here.
The sophistication of integrated circuits was also increasing at a rapid rate, while the cost of manufacture continued to fall. Gordon Moore noted that steadily improving production techniques meant the number of transistors on a chip was doubling every year. He predicted that this would continue for at least the next decade.
One of my colleagues dubbed this Moore's Law. And since then, Moore's Law has been applied to about anything that changes exponentially with time, and I'm happy to take credit for all of it.
Sing we and chant, it's one of the grand. La 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 la. Sing we and chant, it's one of the
As at college, Noyce still found time to enjoy a bewildering array of leisure activities. He directed a chorus of madrigal singers, nicknamed Noyce's Voices. He remained a keen swimmer and indulged his boyhood passion for flight, qualifying as a pilot and buying his first plane. These pursuits offered an escape from aspects of his job that he didn't enjoy.
The problem at Fairchild was that it was located on the West Coast as a subsidiary of an East Coast company. And the East Coast companies had operated in a way differently than the new West Coast companies did.
Noyce had been answering to Fairchild's New York-based parent company ever since Sherman Fairchild had exercised his option to buy out the 8 founders. This had made Noyce and his colleagues wealthy men. But they'd lost their independence and essentially become employees of an old-school East Coast corporation which Noyce felt showed little respect for its most successful division.